First, we need to heal the emotions from past memories that are still affecting you now. Step 2 would be to work toward actually getting happier and striving towards your goals. Sometimes if someone's really stubborn about holding on to a past memory, I would have to talk to them about why. What are you getting out of holding on to that?
This is A Joyful Rebellion, the podcast that explores that moment you realize the life and success you worked so hard to create didn't come with all the fulfillment you thought it would. I'm your host, James Walters, and I want you to be the author of your own story. Each week, I connect with people who inspire bold answers to the question, what do I do now to create a life I love? If you're ready to start answering that question for yourself, you're in the right place. So let's start a joyful rebellion. If you could have the ability to remember the details of every single day of most of your life, would you want to? Recalling every conversation, adventure, misadventure, the weather, and the day's current events on a whim might seem cool at first, but do you think it would eventually become a burden? My guest today is Frank Healy. He's one of about 100 people in the world who can recall every day of his life in vivid detail since he was 6 years old. He spent his career helping people become the best version of themselves and written several books on the topic of memories and how we can not only heal from, but also triumph over our past traumas to live our best life. Frank Healy, thank you for joining us on A Joyful Rebellion today.
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here.
You got a fascinating story because you're one of around 100 people in the world who has something I think a lot of people would call a gift, but also I want to talk a little bit more if you've always seen it as a gift, but you can remember every single day of your life since you were 6 years old. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. I turned 64 in May, and I can remember every date since Monday, February 28th, 1966. So that's about 58 and a half years of daily memories.
Wow. And you actually do a lot of work with people and their memories. You're someone who works with people to overcome what's holding them back, maybe things that are getting in the way of them having the best life that they can have. Given that you can remember every single day, did you have some experiences with that led you to want to help other people work on themselves?
Well, yes, I became interested in psychology because for every day, along with the day of the week it was, news, weather, personal events, it also included where I would remember the emotions that I had when the incidents were taking place. So that's a lot of emotional storage. And so that's how years ago, my special memory was kind of both a blessing and a curse. It was, when people first hear about it, they say, oh, that's great. You can remember every vacation, every fun time with friends, all fun times with dates and all along. The downside is I could also remember with high emotional intensity, losing jobs, romantic rejections, bad days, and all the times. In fact, as a little kid, I used to sometimes drive my parents crazy. Like I'd say, oh, it was a year ago today when you told me I hadn't been good for the past week. And I didn't realize how that would hurt their feelings, but
You're just listing the facts. And
yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I can imagine that'd be such a double-edged sword because you get the good stuff just as much as you get the bad stuff. If this started when you were 6, at what point in your life was it pretty soon before people are like, wait a minute, how did you know that? How did you pull that out of your brain that specifically? When was it people started looking at you and saying, Frank, you got something that no one else really has?
It wasn't too long. Afterwards, I said to some adult, so on Thursday, August 4th, we were on vacation at the shore in Sea Isle City, New Jersey, and my dad took my brother and I out rowing in a boat, and this was in December. So the man said, not everybody can do that. I don't know what I did on August 4th. So even before the end of the year, 1966, I realized that I was unique that way. I kind of kept it under wraps for the most part until I was 14 years old. And toward the end of school, they were going to have a talent show on the penultimate, second to last day of school. And so, it was mostly people who sang or did magic and stuff, but played the guitar. But I thought, what if I could entertain people by telling them what day of the week they were born on and stuff? So I tried out, and then when I was on the stage rehearsing, the vice principal came up to me and said, "Frank, it's a great talent, but I'm afraid that some of the kids might not understand it and get nasty, maybe shoot paper clips at you in the stage, people who didn't quite get it." But that was when I started exposing it, so I wasn't that disappointed if that was going to happen. But then, and over the years, I found it was fun to entertain people, telling them all about significant dates in their lives, whether it was their birth, their graduation, their wedding date, or when their kids were born. And so I realized it was unique then. But over the years, it got to be a little bit of a burden remembering all the bad stuff too, because memories would flash in my mind. And a lot of times it was memories of what happened on that particular date. I became interested in psychology with the idea, well, I'm not going to let go of the memories or the incident, but maybe I could learn to let go of the bad feelings from the bad memories, but keep the good feelings from the good memories. And I didn't realize until years later that because over the years when people first learn of my memory, they'll say things like, maybe you should have been an accountant or an economist because you're good with numbers. But when the University of California studied me, they did phone tests between 2008 and 2010 then, and then invited me over to do more in-depth testing. So I realized that it really had more to do with autobiographical than it had to do with numbers. So from that, I realized, okay, so it's great that I did become a licensed professional counselor as well as a writer, because it has more to do with memories and the emotions behind them. It has to do with numbers. So sort of became like more at peace with it at that time. In fact, I will say that in college, I gave accounting and I gave economics a try, but I just didn't fall in love with any of that.
You're in a really unique position to help people overcome past traumatic events because you remember all of yours. What kind of work did you have to do on yourself in order to work through and deal with, being able to remember all the vivid details of every day? That is a lot of information to process. And when they tend to come back, if you think, 10 years on this day is when something significant maybe happened to you, you've got to learn some strategies for yourself to cope with that. How did that start to translate into how you work with your clients, helping them get over things that are truly traumatic to them? They happened in the past. They have memories of it, not quite as vivid maybe as you have, but they still impact their present day lives. How do you work that in?
A lot of times, some specific meditations help with that. I wrote a self-help trilogy called Heal Your Memories, with 3 books, and they're a combination of where I interviewed 12 to 15 people for each book who have been through some real trauma but are now happy and thriving. Like I did bullying victims, a rape victim, and I interviewed someone who grew up in war-torn Europe during World War II, and somebody who had a career sidelining injury on a motorcycle, which stopped them from being able to grow up to be a police officer, and how they rearranged their lives and did better.
Yeah.
That's part of the books. And the other part is these exercises, mostly meditative, where you visualize certain things to overcome the feelings from your past. There's one where it's a modification of an NLP exercise, neurolinguistic programming, where you pick 2 memories, a happy memory and a sad or tough or traumatic memory. And then you go into a meditative state and you alternate between visualizing the good memory and the bad memory back and forth, but you do the good memory for longer periods. And after going back and forth a few times, the sting just isn't there from the bad memory anymore. So that helps, and it also helps sometimes to to reframe your thoughts about the bad memory. For instance, I learned to be more compassionate to others from having been bullied and learn how to still feel good about myself. In fact, the man who had had the motorcycle accident, his wife told him that if he had become a police officer, she wouldn't have married him because there's too much daily risk on the job.
Oh.
So if you look at it as something to grow from and not something that makes you bad, and a lot of times through rape victims or incest victims, they need to learn that they can have control over their lives now, including their thoughts and emotions, and they can learn to trust people who meet certain standards when they meet them. So it's all about using traumatic memories as a lesson and for growth rather than for scarring you for life, which incidentally, I hate that expression.
What is it about that expression you dislike so much?
Because it insinuates that you can't get any better, that you're not going to be as much of a person as you did before the traumatic event.
Right. It's almost like a sentence, some sort of thing you have to carry out, and especially the for life part, because that's your choice. You can be scarred for life, or you can have an incident that happened in your life that was not what you would choose, but at the same time, you can move on from it. What inspired you to start writing the books, interviewing all the people? Was it the experiences you had and how much of an understanding you have about how memories can impact you, and you wanted to help others? What was the...
Yeah, that's it. Like, I've counseled people for years, helping them heal the past and move on to happy, peaceful, and productive lives. And in September of 2012, I was at a writers' conference. And it's interesting how something indirect can inspire you to do something. Somebody said to me, you have the perfect last name to be a healer, Healy. So then at the conference, I talked to some people who had overcome some traumatic things. I talked to a man who back in 1982 was going for the world record for juggling. But then one night he was hit by a truck on the way to his performance in Atlantic City, and he could never juggle the same. And I thought, I can find more people like this. So I thought of people I knew, and that was for the first book, Heal Your Memories, Change Your Life. And for the second book and the third, which are The Ultimate Guide to Healing Your Past and Empower Yourself Through Your Memories, I used this HARO, Help a Reporter, out. I advertised for people, and I got some people with incredible stories who were very eager to put it out there. And of course, I had to sign liability releases, had them do that and all. So it became a good thing. And previous to that, I had written a memoir on what it was like having a memory like mine. My first book in '07 was Living with a Phenomenal Memory. Since then, I've done a revised edition in 2018, Who Could Forget?
I like that.
Yeah. So I've written that, and I've also written books on emotional intelligence, like on general emotional intelligence and emotional intelligence for the workplace, for relationships, and different things. Now, my latest book that came out last year is entitled Stress-Free Success. It's all about how to strive for your goals, goal setting, and how to keep motivated, but as well as some stress reduction exercises like meditation, journaling, exercises, because a lot of people who are type A and really work for their goals also have a lot of anxiety and stress. And then there's a lot of people who meditate a lot, but they don't get too far in everyday life. So I wrote a book on how to combine that so the reader can do both. And I'm currently working on a workbook to go along with it.
That's really good. And it sounds like the books that you have are themed to help people with specific things. I know journaling is something I'm really a fan of. I've done an episode on it. It was just a solo episode about my own experience with it.
Okay.
And I just started journaling around 2020.
Okay.
Because what else are we going to do, right?
Oh, yeah. In 2020, what else was there to do with the COVID pandemic? And
we were just sitting at home alone trying to figure out life. And I started journaling. I'd played with journaling previously, but never really got it. Never really understood, like, what's this useful for? So I started writing things down and would just do a page a day. And then it was probably 2021, 2022. I started looking back on what I'd written and I started seeing the patterns. It's hard to see patterns if you don't have something to reflect back on. Like, you've got a great memory. You can think about every day. And if you start to string those together, you could probably see the patterns. Oh, I tend to like to eat this particular thing, or I go here quite often. So you get to see how you spend your time. You get to see what it is you complain about. Like for me, I started noticing the things that I complain about. Oh, I haven't achieved this yet, even though that's been on my goals list, that sort of thing. And it was a real wake up call for me, because I was like, okay, obviously I can look back with this journal, look at each page and see how my relationships, how I felt about my work. And now I need to decide, am I okay with that? And that was huge for me, just saying, okay, these are some things I need to let go of. Yeah. These are some things I need to embrace and move forward with. And a lot of folks I talk to on the podcast, we talk about is sometimes depression is when you think about the past, and those would be in the category of memories. And anxiety is when you're nervous or worried or fearful about the future. And with you being able to reflect on the past so easily and have it so accessible just in your mind, you don't have to look things up. Does that make it easier for you to sort of put words to it, take the power away from the memories and the things that happen? And you say, oh yeah, that happened, and then go through some of the exercises you discussed. Does that make you more susceptible to lingering on some of those memories, or you just don't have time because you're in the present? Or are you anxious about the future? For you personally, how does your gift translate into any of those things?
Well, it's on the one hand, I know in beginning of May of 2020, I was forced to leave a job that I had devoted 10 and a half years to because of some disagreements with the new management. And I don't know why people who know that I remember things like this would ever want to sort of do any crap to me. But but it happened. I remember cleaning out my office May 1st, and I'd think about, boy, 10 years ago today, my wife threw me a big surprise birthday bash 3 weeks early for my 50th birthday. And then we did go on a cruise 3 weeks later. And so it was like, wow, there were good memories on this day and lots of good memories. But I had to be careful about not comparing then and now, like, well, this really stinks compared to that year. But it is useful to sometimes think, wow, this is really great compared to what happened on this day another year.
Yeah.
You know, when it works the opposite. So I have so much in there. In fact, somebody today before church was saying, unfortunately, a month ago today, my brother died, and he was only 61. And somebody said, well, yeah, sometimes it's sad, but sometimes, since I have such a total flood of memories with him, it's like I can console myself remembering the good times without thinking, oh, I won't have that anymore. Just think, oh, grateful for all the good times we had. So it helps to really have control that way. Control of the mind, because I have so much to draw from.
When you start working with someone who has such a hard time letting go of the past, I have people in my family who I don't talk to them very often. But what I find when I do strike up a conversation, it starts the usual way you would imagine. How you doing? How are things been going? How is this person or that person you haven't seen in a while? And I find with just certain people, and I've learned to expect it, so it's not a shock or a surprise, but they'll go right back to something that happened 15 years ago. And I say, wait, are we rewinding the tape that far? And they'll bring something up that was maybe unresolved for them, but that water has gone under the bridge so long ago. How do you start working with a client who they say, oh, I'm having these issues in my life and I just can't get over, or maybe you start peeling back the layers and you discover with them, there's a thing in their past, a memory, or maybe a feeling of a memory they just can't get past in order to live their best life now. How do you start that conversation with them?
Well, I would start it out with, first we need to heal the emotions from the past memories that are still affecting you now. Then step 2 would be to work toward actually getting happier and striving towards your goals. And sometimes if someone's really stubborn about holding on to a past memory, I would have to talk to them about why. What are you getting out of holding on to that? Because, like, if someone did something really rotten to them, that they'll hold on to the memory because they want to be on guard for nobody doing that to them again. But I tell them, you don't have to hold on to the intensity of that. I think you can be smart enough to recognize telltale signs. And if someone's about to do that to you without bringing up all the pain from a past memory, and then practice assertiveness skills with them or cut them out of your life if it's possible.
Like you said, if they're stubborn and they need to hold on to that memory for some reason, then that's the next place to go. People want to be happy. That's the reason why a lot of times people go to therapy, is because they're not happy for whatever reason. And sometimes it's things in the past that led to that. How do you help people understand that they can be happy anytime under any circumstances?
Well, I help them to see that so much of happiness is controlled by thoughts and beliefs. You know, it's like the longer you dwell on a memory or think a thought, the stronger inside you the feelings and emotions from that become. So that's why it's important, if you're dwelling on a past memory that doesn't make you feel very good, or thinking of a belief like, I'm not as good as other people, the longer you think that, the more intense the feeling will get. So it's important to cut it off, stop the thought, and then replace it with a better thought. In fact, a better thought could be a more positive thought about yourself and your circumstances, or it could be even a thought of a past memory that was good and that you believe things like that can still happen in the future. And of course, we were talking to journaling earlier, gratitude. I mean, I journal first thing in the morning and I list things I'm grateful for and things I'm committed to and things I'm happy about and glad that I have, so I can get the day off to a really good jump start.
Yeah, and gratitude can be so powerful if you give that a chance, and it takes a person out of that victim mentality into being in charge of what they think and how they feel about something. I know I was journaling this morning. I kicked my day off with coffee and a journal and some meditation, and then roll right into work from there. And it can be just the thing that settles a person just enough to really be ready for that day, whatever happens. And I don't journal with the intention of gratitude. A lot of times it works itself in there. Like, I'm so happy it was cool last night because it's been super hot every day here. So sometimes it's the little things, when I hear the crickets outside, and just like, that was nice to have that experience. So I definitely think gratitude is huge. I haven't had success with being intentional about it yet, but I have found that it's a great feeling to express it.
Oh, yes.
And to have it for sure. Now, when it comes to your memory, I'm just curious, and this popped in my head a second ago. You remember all of those days?
Yeah.
Do you have them ranked in any sort of order? Do you have a favorite out of all of those?
In my book, The Ultimate Guide to Healing Your Past, I write about how I compartmentalize memories.
I bet.
You know, there's a good file, a bad file, and a neutral file.
Okay.
But of course, I don't judge things as good or bad so much more as I used to, which is another key to happiness, not judging. But it's like, you know, good days, like even looking at July 28th, 1987 was a little rough. My dad came to teach me how to drive a stick shift for my new truck I had just bought. It was a hot evening, and got hot for a few minutes until I invited him upstairs for a drink afterwards. And then July 28th, 1991, my sister had a big bash at her house, and I remember having fun and meeting her coworkers, swimming and playing volleyball. So, you know, there's good and bad. And we think about what really is good and bad. Good is what you want, and bad is what you don't want. That's the only real way to define the two. So you'll learn from things, and I don't want to make my parents look in a bad light. I mean, they were really great. We grew up in an intellectually stimulating environment. We had a lot of nice things. In fact, when my dad wrote a book he published in 2013, The Money Power Continuum, all about bureaucracy in the world, I promoted it on my own website too, even though he passed on March 20th, 2018. But, still all the wisdom I got from him, and Mom always made it nice at home. So sometimes I will think about, like, what was my favorite and least favorite of a date or a month. Let's just say my favorite February was 2011 when I went to California and was tested, and then we had a lot of fun for a few days afterwards. And
Yeah.
my least favorite was 2020 when COVID was beginning to loom and things were falling apart at work. So, I'll think on that stuff too.
I could do the math, but I know you've got the math. How many days is that you remember vividly? Because we're going back,
58 years.
8 years? Yeah, 58 years times 3, 65 plus some leap years.
Yeah.
What's the math on that?
Well, you just do a quick on a calculator and figure.
I got a calculator here, so that's 360. So that's at least 21,170 days. That's a lot of information.
Yeah, it is
Frank.
a lot of information, but I know that from studies of the brain that a lot of those superstitions about how, well, if you have too much in your brain, there won't be room for anything else are not valid. The studies of the brain beginning in the 90s with all the decade of the brain stuff. We have much more capacity than we know how to realize, so I don't worry about one day I won't be able to learn anything new or will stop remembering what happened. It's a lot of information, true, but the brain can handle it.
And there are parts of the brain that you are using that obviously in California they wanted to explore a little bit more of and find out how it was unlocked in you, whereas pretty much everyone except 100 or so folks in the world don't have access to that part of their brain.
Yeah, so they did find, like, among other things they did with us was an MRI, and they found out that parts of our frontal lobes where the thinking takes place are almost twice as large as the average person.
So did you get to meet other folks who can do what you do?
Well, they did us one at a time.
Okay.
But I still asked for a list, and I am friends with a couple of the guys who were also, because they consented to communicating. Two of the men I still keep in touch with, and eventually I was able to find a connection to get to meet Marilu Henner, the actress who also has this, and remember from Taxi Nardo. And so in 2013, her manager invited me to a lunch and then watch her in a performance at the Bucks County Playhouse in New Hope, Pennsylvania. Then on June 9th, I went to see her again in another show. So I did have lunch with she and her gang back in Saturday, August 31st, 2013. Now, on June 9th, I went to the show, and she just gave me a nod afterwards because she was rushing to go to dinner with her family after that. And some of the other ones I communicate via Facebook and all. It's like, if you're ever in my area or I'm ever in your area, we'll meet up.
That's so cool. Do you have another book on the horizon that you're working on now?
Well, yes, I'm actually, like we were talking about happiness a little bit ago, I'm working on a book on happiness, and within the next year I want to do 12 short reads on different relevant topics, because with today's busy society, short reads like maybe 10 to 200 pages are becoming popular. A lot of my books that I've already put out are long, like 150 to over 200 pages. So I'm going to work on some short reads with condensed material that people will have time to read from cover to cover.
From your other books in the past, or even from your practice working with clients, is there a particular client's transformation that's one of your favorite stories that you like to tell?
School bullying is such a problem in today's culture. So this young lady, Katie Eck, she was the first person I interviewed about her middle school and high school bullying experiences. And then I got friendly with her. So when I was finishing up Empower Yourself Through Your Memories, I thought she could be my last one too, just like she was the first one. And it was just inhumane the way the kids treated her. in middle school and high school. Now she's a 35-year-old with a 4-year-old. She runs her own counseling agency, lives on a farm near the beach with her engineer husband. So she has a phenomenal life now. So that was really great to interview her a couple times. And they were all great stories. If you order my book, you'll read about a ton of amazing stories of resilient people.
If someone's listening, they want to get one of those books or all of those books, what's the best place for them to connect with you?
You could go to my website, phenomenalmemory.com, or you could type my name in on Amazon and they're all there.
Okay.
Go to my Author Central page or just plug my name in and a lot of them will be there. So that's the best way.
Got it. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about that we haven't covered?
I'd like to reiterate the idea that if you don't have a memory like mine, many people do have good and bad memories because the majority of the population tend to be the ones that were of high emotional intensity, either good emotional intensity or bad emotional intensity. And we can all overcome bad memories. And some people, realistically, having worked in the counseling field for almost 35 years, some people do realistically need medication to help them too, but if they have an organic chemical imbalance in the brain. But if you need that, do it plus do some of the techniques in my books for the best results.
That's good advice because not everything can be healed through therapy for everyone. So sometimes it's time to take it to the next level. Well, Frank, thank you so much for having this conversation. It was fascinating. I really enjoyed getting to learn a lot more about you and about your books and about what you do to help people. So thank you for being here on A Joyful Rebellion.
Yes, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me today. If you've enjoyed this content and are thinking about ways to share your story or even get more joy out of your life, I have a free ebook that I'd love to share with you. It's called Plotting Your Joyful Rebellion, and I designed it to be a 5-step field guide full of guerrilla warfare tactics to help prepare you to overthrow any of the parts of your life you feel the call to rebel against. Go to ajoyfulrebellion.com and click on the link right there at the top to claim your free copy of the book. Again, that's ajoyfulrebellion.com, or simply hit the link at the top of the show notes. What sort of rebellion are you plotting right now? I'd love to hear about it. Connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, or through the website at ajoyfulrebellion.com. Thanks again for listening today, and be sure to stop by next week for another episode full of joyful rebellion.